My guest is still the Information Minister, Kojo Oppong Nkrumah. We are now seated, and so let's get into some of the specifics from the manifesto launch over the weekend. I'm pretty sure that you followed it. You followed already the presentation. I hope it made a bit more sense to you. Mr. Nkrumah, let's start with the what has turned out to be, I guess, one of the most topical, most talked about promise. Yeah. The Cape Coast Airport. Yeah. The president on Friday was on the show on ATL FM. She was asked a question this morning. People feel strongly that looking at our potential in tourism, we need to put up an airport. The president reacts, quote, "This is a place which is 1.5 hours from the capital, which has a major international airport. There is an airport in Takoradi. The studies are ongoing." Then the next day, it's in the manifesto that you will build an airport for Cape Coast. Was this study done? The study the president talks about, was it done?
Yes, my understanding is that it's a study that has been done. Let me give you a bit of a background. I mean, if my reading is correct, the conversation about an airport for Cape Coast started as far back as around 1997. And since then, there have been repeated calls and analysis about whether or not it is feasible to have an airport in the central region or close to the Cape Coast area. If I recall again, the Mills administration talked about a feasibility study to even determine whether or not that can be done. Now, if you again check from about 2017, 2018, Cecilia Abinadapa, then as aviation minister, talked about the feasibility work that was going on for Cape Coast as a potential place to have an airport. In that interview with the president, I've seen people suggest that the president said the need had not been justified. Today on Asempa FM, I asked for the full tape to be played back. The president never said that. Indeed, the president talked about the fact that the feasibility for an airport in Koforidua, which is also just about an hour from Accra and Accra's International Airport, and that of Cape Coast are ongoing by the Aviation Ministry. Some persons have asked, so why didn't he announce it there and then, and it is in our manifesto? The president has a right to answer questions as he sees fit. Indeed,
as of the time he was speaking, he didn't know it was complete.
He did. The president assigned the vice president to chair this effort. I have been in several meetings where the president and the vice president, in preparing us for this event, alluded to several things that we needed to tidy up, put up a committee, reviewed all that was in here. But the president was not obliged at that interview to necessarily give a hint of what was in this manifesto.
No.
Indeed, if you recall...
No, I mean, he could have simply said the feasibility study is complete and we are waiting to see what the outcome is.
He chooses to answer his questions as he sees fit. Let me give another example. He was asked about what will you do about tertiary education, about 2 weeks to this. And he said, we are considering what to do about it. Our manifesto was not out. He was not obliged to tell anybody what was in the manifesto until the event day. On the event day,
he wasn't required to tell us. Yes. The question was simple. He chose to go to the route of studies ongoing.
Yes.
But you said after that time he knew it was finished.
He knew that it was clear in this manifesto that
we just completed the studies. Yes. He could have just simply said that without telling us what is going to be in the manifesto.
That way, and I don't think that we're going to mark the president's scripts that if he didn't answer it this way, there was something wrong with it. I think the first attempt by some persons to claim that the president had said that it was not feasible or that the need had not been established, it's falling flat. And now I notice a new attempt to say, but why didn't he answer it this way? He was not obliged to answer the question in anybody's
just for that, but I got this transcribed for me because I wanted to be absolutely clear. Just read the rest of what you said.
Yeah.
The president continued, because the journalist asked, go ahead, you don't see the need for an airport?
Good, and that was a very good question the journalist asked because, and if I just may explain, when the president made the initial analysis that this is an area that is close to Takoradi, which has an airport, close to Accra that had an airport, anybody who was listening, and I don't begrudge the questioner, was beginning to form the impression that the president was suggesting that
it was not going to happen.
So it was very good that the journalist asked
Then the president clarified. The president said the response of the government should not just be people said we need an airport.
No, hold on. I think that this your transcript leaves out the first part of the president's answer because I have transcribed it as well.
No, the first part is what I read.
No. After the journalist says, are you saying there's no need? The president answers by saying that I'm not saying that. What I'm saying, and then he moves on to this.
Okay,
one. That part is critical because it cures a supposition.
Okay, but let me read. The response of the government should be the matter has been thoroughly examined,
yes,
and the needs being established.
Yes.
And that is a process that the Ministry of Aviation is going through.
Absolutely.
It is doing the same with Koforidua, the region from which I come, which is also another region location which is very near Accra.
Yes.
Another an hour and a half to be able to decide for ourselves whether, in fact, the need for an airport can be justified when you have Accra, you have Kumasi, you have Tamale, you have Takoradi, whether on the coast with Accra's presence, there is a need for an additional airport. My fundamental question to you on the back of this, if the report exists, what does the report say justifies the placement of the airport?
That is what we've put here in our manifesto, and not just that, added habour to it as well. We are clear in our mind that it is feasible, it is important, it will help improve economic activity.
For transparency,
let me just give you a few
experts have said it's not.
These days
so what does a feasibility study say?
These days you can have all sorts of experts. Let me give you some numbers that we have been working with. For example, on an annual basis, about 310,000 people go into the central regional area for tourism only. Discount all other economic activity. Then you take the Cape Coast University, tens of thousands of students, and then you have faculty who are doing their regular travels in and out. Then you take secondary or senior high school education. You have scores of schools in the Cape Coast area, tens of thousands of students, parents who are going in and out, visiting their wards, as well as faculty. The kind of traffic flow that goes into and out of the central regional area is pretty well established. Number two, the conversation was about an airport in the central region on the outskirts of Cape Coast that offers you a bridge between the central region and the western region. Indeed, today I've heard the aviation minister speaking on another radio station now go further into that detail that yes, that is where we are eyeing to put it, in the central region, just on the outskirts of Cape Coast, between the central region and the western region, so that it can be a good midpoint that serves the two places. So we are clear in our mind why and what we intend to do. Now, if there are those who say that once the president didn't say it at the interview, then it means, if I've heard some say, it was smuggled in. I've heard some say it was smuggled in at the last minute. I can assure you that
it's in the written hard copy.
This piece of work was done months and months and months way ahead of Saturday. It was not smuggled in. It was not an afterthought. It is something we are quite clear will add to the economic growth and expansion of the central region. And hopefully when we have a second term,
the whole airport was built and I struggled to find flights.
Yes.
Question is commercial viability. Are the airlines interested in flying to Cape Coast?
Yes, they are. In fact,
they've told you this. It's in the.
I know what conversations have taken place. In fact, even the funding and construction of the airport, there are private entities that are interested because of the traffic projections.
To fund the construction.
Yes,
how much is it going to cost us?
Well, I'm not going to throw out those numbers here.
Because you don't know?
Well, I'm not going to sit here and throw out. I am not under any obligation to throw out some numbers here.
No, but this is transparency.
Don't worry, we will give.
People must gauge. Today, I'm sure you've heard the view from Central Region. People doubt that this will happen.
Don't worry.
So they'll need to know how much will it cost. Has government thought about that?
We will give the specific sector persons the opportunity to outline some of these details. I'm telling you the numbers that have gone into determining the feasibility, the kind of traffic flow in there. I'm telling you that there are even conversations with private entities that are interested in front-loading some of the...
But to my question...
If I may land with my answer.
No problem.
If I may. Some of the private entities that are even interested in front-loading the financing because of the feasibilities associated with it. My point in conclusion is this. Let nobody be under any illusion that the fact that the president didn't announce it at his interview means that the numbers don't add up.
Back to the question. How much is it going to cost us?
Well, I'm not going to be putting out those numbers here now. We're going to leave the sectors responsible for some of these things to outline the details. You are the information minister, Mr. But it doesn't mean I'm supposed to be sitting here putting out all of the numbers.
No, but these are numbers. You say that private sector is willing to put in, government is going to put in money. You must know. You must know.
So at the time we mentioned free senior high school, you would recall
that was a big conversation that we had about costing.
It was. But you will recall that when you're doing manifestos, when you are doing what in America they will call platforms, you are not necessarily putting definite numbers on everything.
But this is why this is different. You've told us tonight that we've done feasibility study. Feasibility study will tell you commercial viability, will tell you cost, because you have to net it off against, I'm going to pump in this, I'm not going to get the returns.
And I'm saying to you,
so it cannot have a feasibility study without knowing the cost of the airport.
I'm not going to sit here and throw out numbers. I've explained to you what the big vision, what the big agenda of the new patriotic party in this second term, God willing, in the central region will be. And I've also told you that if you look at our history and if you look at even global best practices, it is not the practice that for every single promise that you make, you put a figure to it ab initio.
But this one is different.
It's not
because
different.
of your admission, there is a feasibility study.
It is one of the policy commitments we are making.
But
to
comes with a feasibility study.
Country. For example,
was completed by your words long before Saturday.
For example, there are major infrastructure projects that we have talked about in this country that at the time of envisioning it, we have not necessarily put a hardcore figure to it publicly.
Yeah, but this is different. I'm just drawing attention to.
Don't worry about it.
Your own admission that this is different.
It is no different.
Those ones you admitted. Well, you're now going to do the work.
It is no different.
This one, the work has already been done.
I don't want to split hairs about it. I'm saying that there are several infrastructure projects in this country. When, for example, we spoke about the Burkina Accra Central Spine Rail Network, we explained a big vision. We told you the broad-based feasibilities that have taken place. We didn't start off by putting figures out there because in this public discourse, here's what happens. If today you put out a number that says 21 million, okay, and tomorrow by the time they finish, because of topography, extra work, etc., it's 26 million. You now have a second conversation about potential inflations, etc. So what I'm saying to you is that this is the broad promise we have made. It is backed by a clear understanding of the fact that it is feasible, and we'll leave the ministries and the persons responsible for many of these sectors to flesh out the details as we go.
Have you seen the feasibility study yourself?
No, I haven't cited the entire document.
You know it exists.
Listen, I work with briefs. I, as information minister, I work with briefs. Okay. The brief I have is that there's a clear feasibility that gives us an understanding that this is a necessity for this area. It has market potential. There are interests, even from private sector, that may be willing to front load the financing for it, and we are able to make a commitment to it that we will deliver to it.
The new harbour that the Vice President promised, what sort of harbour is this? This is a Tema harbour replica?
My understanding of all the conversations that have gone into it is that it's an ultra-modern, large-scale fishing harbour. That's my understanding of all of the conversations that have gone into it. The reason being, Cape Coast, as I'm sure you are aware, the Central Regional Capital has a very, very, very significant fishing pool in there that could do with significant investment of this nature. It will go a long way to ensure that in terms of the kind of business that comes into these ports, storage, transportation, haulage, those who are doing ancillary services there, it adds a lot to their economic activity. So that's my understanding of what goes into that one.
Let's talk about the rent initiative that was announced. You're going to give loans to poor folks like myself, poor journalists like myself, so we could rent. But the clarity that many people were asking in the back of the promise was you're giving them the loan to pay the landlord rent advance. But there is a law that says you cannot pay rent advance beyond 6 months, correct?
Yes.
I mean, I'm wondering, is it only loan to pay 6 months?
No, if you look at the housing component of our manifesto, we break it into about 3 parts. First, there is the rent part of it, which says that, listen, there are a lot of young people, and if you do the sit down with young Ghanaians, if you do the focus group discussion with them, there are various layers of challenges. Those who can get access to education, those who get access but cannot afford it, those who are looking for jobs, and those who, once they get a job, have challenges with rental, etc. Now, in dealing with that specific challenge, the policy proposition, which we have now committed to, is to put the rent assistance scheme together. What it does is that if you have gainful employment and you have regular income, be it in the formal or the informal sector, and this regular income is demonstrable, the rent assistance scheme, having registered landlords, available supply of properties, and those who are also in search of those properties, will be in a position to front load the rent advance for you. And then, because your regular income is also insured, there's an insurance component to it, as your income flows in, you settle those obligations to the scheme. This comes after we have done 2 things to the rent environment. One, there's a new Rent Control Act, which we have sent to Parliament, which seeks to deal with the realities of 6 months, etc. And 2, a digitization of the space to make it easier to match demand and supply for housing units. That is on one spectrum, which is the rental side. Then you have another spectrum that deals with low-income housing. That for low-income housing, one of the things we need to do is to reduce the cost of producing these housing units in terms of the inputs, in terms of unencumbered land at low prices. That makes it easier, therefore, for those in the construction space to really put out affordable housing. You recall, we've had several challenges in this country, from STX to wherever, about affordable housing that is not really affordable, from the Kufuor days till now. The learning is that if we are able to ensure that the cost of materials, the cost of land are all reduced, you have a higher chance of getting affordable housing at really affordable rates. You have another level which has got to do with what we call the middle income housing. And the middle income housing, we are looking to solve it in two ways. There's a mortgage side of it, so that if indeed there's middle income housing, people can pre-finance it and pay over a period. So you have the mortgage scheme, which we have outlined in the manifesto and how it works. And then you have the supply side, which seeks to make land banks available. Again, affordable technology, not necessarily the one in the low-income area. But if you go to Singapore and other places, as the studies have been done, they have high-quality, affordable technology for building, which delivers building in a shorter period of time with quality materials that don't necessarily cost as much as this our cement and concrete that we are doing. So a mixture of these would ensure that you have middle-income housing with a mortgage scheme attached for people in the working class who need a mortgage to purchase a house and pay with their incomes over a period. You have the low-income housing where we support to ensure that the housing is made available at real affordable rates. And then for those who are just interested in renting, you also have a space where we can front load this advance for you, and then your regular income comes into play. But all
for
of this,
how many months?
All of this,
for the front loading.
all of this is now supposed to be dealt with under the new Rent Control Act, which is now before Parliament, and then the digitized
so just for clarity,
regime.
The loans, for how many months of rent advance would that cover?
Those fine details have to be worked out. But my expectation is that it will be in consonance with whatever final output the law becomes. If
but
we
the
keep
current
this
law
law,
still limits...
It's 6 months.
So 6 months, yes.
We have a new bill that is before Parliament. The idea is to get that bill enacted, and in consonance with this 6 months, then ensure that this your 6-month rent is paid for you, and then you can service it over a period.
They also in the manifesto that I saw, I mean, one of the key things that has also come up, I'm sure you followed the conversation. This is about something that I didn't see. I mean, it's something I didn't see.
Okay.
The manifesto is also about a lot that is, we've talked a lot about what is in there, but what about stuff that is all in there? One obvious, I don't know whether it's an omission, but it's too glaring. It's ECG concession. It also is a big deal when you come into power. In fact, if you look at the 2016 manifesto, you made a commitment to improve that.
Yes.
It's completely missing in the 2020 manifesto. Yes. I wonder, have we completely abandoned the concession arrangement?
As we speak now, you know that from 2016, we raised challenges with how that concession arrangement was being operated. When we came to power, we amended the structure of the concession agreement. When we launched into it, I think it was on this very show that
when the news broke that you had
that we had challenges and therefore had to pull back. As things unfold currently, though we keep on the horizon the potential to improve the ECG turnaround program and continue to examine the various options for it, the status quo is pretty fine and functioning.
As in ECG managing everything?
It's pretty fine and functioning now. Your lights are on, the billing is on, the servicing and ancillary services are on.
But the losses are still there.
Well, not as much as it used to be, which therefore generated this whole need for the concession agreement. So as I said, now we are not making a commitment that we are going to, in the next 4 years, God willing, if we have a second term, put ECG on a private sector participation program. We have not said that. We have not committed to that. The current model as is functioning appears fine for us, and we have not therefore committed that we'll put ECG on a private sector participation.
So the clarity then, it was left out because you are happy with ECG taking full control.
We have not had reason to make that a priority in the next 4 years.
Okay. So ECG can rest assured that
we
they are
have
in
not,
charge.
you know, you like to reframe my answers.
No, I'm just for clarity.
No, and I'm repeating my answers. We have not had reason to make that a commitment for the next 4 years.
But fraud was committed on us in the PDS. Why haven't we seen any prosecution?
Well, so you are making a categorical statement that fraud was committed.
It is words that were used by the government side that went to investigate the matter.
Mr. John Peter Amewu Mr. John Peter Amewu, Energy Minister, when he spoke. And remember, we said that...
But the team that traveled came back and made an established fact that that's what they found.
No. They didn't say that they had found fraud. Relax. What we said was that we were terminating or were discontinuing because a condition precedent had not been fulfilled.
Yeah, that's the statement that came before. I'm talking about the result of the team's work. I have a copy of that report here.
I also have a copy. I'm coming to that. Let's flow from the beginning. And then Mr. John Peter Amewu mentioned that it was because the guarantee that was procured was not proper. And there is the belief that it was fraudulently procured. That was the first time that the expression fraud or fraudulently was mentioned in there. The government of Ghana then proceeded to investigate what had transpired. The company that was supposed to have issued that instrument then denied being the one that had issued it. The government of Ghana came back and said, well, to our American partners, we cannot continue with a transaction with a party who from the beginning issues a document which it then proceeds to disavow. Whether that document was issued as a result of fraud or negligence, or as the American investigation then sought to suggest, it was later issued and then somebody gave it to somebody on the second. Whatever the underlying reasons were, we were not able to continue because that document, which was a condition precedent at the time when it was issued, was not worth the paper on which it was signed. I know people have then proceeded to say that, okay, there was fraud. Find the people and put them before the courts.
Is that so? That's not government's view?
That is currently a matter of litigation.
Where?
In the courts here in Ghana. Between PDS and the government of Ghana.
PDS has sued government?
Yes. Here, in the courts here in Ghana.
And their claim is what? That we wrongfully terminated the contract?
Yes, wrongful termination is one of their claims. We contest that. We have grounds for contesting it. So those are the matters that are currently in court. We are pretty confident that our case before the courts will hold up at the end of the day.
Okay, so
and I won't proceed to make any.
I get it. So I get it. So as far as government is concerned, this fraud argument, it's not something that it's not a position of government.
We have said. Well, the minister mentioned that it was one of the suspected reasons.
But your investigator didn't find so.
That the document that was produced could have been procured out of fraud. We have insisted that whether it was fraud or it was negligence or the company was now revoking and retroceding, I think that was the expression that they used, or whatever technical name they chose to call it. It was not worth the paper on which it was written, and therefore we could not continue. Now that is a matter of litigation. And like I've said, I'm not going to go further into it. Let the courts decide.
Let's just some quick clarifications on a few issues, and then of course we can move on to the Japa matter. And these are a few things. If you really pay attention to the manifesto, one of the things that crossed my mind was you say that you're going to complete the implementation of the 5-year strategic plan on TVET and establish a National Skills Development Fund. The National Skills Development Fund already exists.
I'm not quite sure whether this is
2020. 2020.
Please read that for me one more time.
You complete the implementation of the 5-year strategic plan on TVET and establish a National Skills Development Fund. But National Skills Development Fund already exists.
My understanding of it is that we intend to complete that full expression that you have read, not necessarily segregate one into two. So it is a continuation of that entire program from TVET to perhaps ramping up the fund.
You say you're going to establish. You say you're going to establish the National Skills Development Fund. The National Skills Development Fund already exists.
And I'm saying that my understanding of that is that it is a full throttle exercise that we intend to continue with.
Yeah,
and the operative word at the beginning is to continue.
Yeah, no, sorry, complete.
Yes.
And this is on, just so I went on, it's on page 155.
Yeah.
Complete the implementation of the 5-year strategic plan on TVET. That's one bit.
Yes.
And then it says, and establish a National Skills Development Fund.
What does the Skills Development Fund do?
The Skills Development Fund is set up under the TVET policy.
Yes.
It's a government policy.
Yes.
But it's being set up under, there's a separate entity
and I'm
under
saying
TVET.
to you that my understanding of that is that the SDF goes to fund activities under TVET. We have a 5-year program to move all that exists under TVET from where it is onto a broader horizon. My understanding of that expression...
But you cannot establish something that already exists.
Evans, you're picking on words.
No, it's important. No, it's not.
No, relax.
You cannot establish something that...
Can I answer your question?
It's pretty obvious on the face of it.
Well, if you have obvious answers, then I don't know why you're asking me.
No, I mean,
a question. Let me answer your question.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Okay, we have a 5-year program to move TVET from where it is onto a broader horizon, to expand it, to make it more accessible, to provide more support for persons who are going through it in terms of machinery and things that they require for startup after the initial skill training. But the two go together.
Yeah.
If you train people and you don't give them the kind of resources that they need and the kind of logistics that they move on to, you're going to have people who've been trained, who have graduated from these institutions, who don't have the capitalization.
Final question on this.
Can I finish with the answer?
Sure.
Okay, let me please, so that people who are at home can also pick up from it. My understanding of that is that this 5-year program is what we intend to complete. We haven't finished with it. And so the full throttle of activities that flow from it, including the funding, etc., is all part of what we intend to finish.
That's one. But the wording is clear. Establish a national skills development. My question to you is, how do you establish something that already has been established?
I answered you already by saying that my understanding of it is that the two go together. What we are talking about is to complete the full throttle activity.
So the skills development
which is to expand that entire sector from the TVET themselves and the funding that goes along.
You say you're going to continue. What you're going to continue is a 5-year strategic plan on TVET, but you're going to now establish something that completely exists already.
Pick on those words. It is the full throttle.
But you put it in the manifesto.
Evans,
I mean, it's not my word. It's put it in the manifesto.
Yes, I understand that, and I've explained to you like 5 times what my understanding of it. It is one of two things.
The drafters of the manifesto know that we have already a national skills development fund.
I cannot speak for the drafters. I'm telling you the policy intent of the administration.
Okay.
I've explained to you what our understanding of it is. You may not like it, you may disagree with it, but I've explained to you what our understanding of it is.
Final one. The manifesto also says, launch a road maintenance infrastructure program to employ youth. In 2011, the NDC had a youth in road maintenance module under the National Youth Employment Program. What's the difference? How different is that?
My understanding is to encourage, and if you look at the PASA deal with entrepreneurship, we talk about having a lot more young people set up businesses that will now have priority attention because it is made up of young people and because of the kind of incentives we are offering to young people. My understanding of this is to cede that space to businesses owned and run by young people. In terms of policy infrastructure, that is very different from having young people as working brigades being recruited to fill potholes, etc., which is what we spoke against as an avenue.
So, and yours, what would the youth we're employing for road maintenance do?
Well, the difference between this and ours is that we are talking about corporate entities owned, managed, led by young people that do this, as against a youth employment program that are responsible for being contracted to do road maintenance projects, as against having working brigades of young people just patching up, potholes.
Road maintenance involves patching up roads.
Well, then you would say that road construction involves young people by the roadside, but the two are different. The difference is that you have a mechanism where you can contract companies. They will use manual labor at some point, but you can contract companies and give them contracts to, with all the machinery and whatever they require, be responsible for maintaining roads. You can also have a different model where you say that we have a youth employment model where young people, essentially like they do by the roadside, go and patch up these elements with pickaxe and hose, etc. The two are conceptually different.